Cybersecurity is about more than just technology. It's about how people behave with emails, data, and cloud applications that directly impacts your company's security posture. Security works best when it's ingrained in the culture of your organization. To learn how to build a security culture and transform your employees from targets into a strong line of defense, head to securityweekly.com/proofpoint and visit their Cybersecurity Awareness Center. Let's face it, cyber attackers have the advantage. ExtraHop is on a mission to help you take it back. Regain the upper hand with security that can't be undermined, outsmarted, or compromised. When you don't have to choose between protecting your business and moving it forward, that's security uncompromised. See how it works in the full product demo, free online at securityweekly.com/ExtraHop.
Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Security Weekly Unlocked will be held in person this December 5th through 7th at the Hilton Lake Buena Vista. We've got keynotes from Alyssa Miller, John Strand, Leslie Carhart, and Dave Kennedy. Visit securityweekly.com/unlock to register and check out our rockstar lineup. Also, join us October 21st for a webinar on why zero-knowledge encryption matters from Keeper Security. If you missed any of our previously recorded webcasts or technical trainings, they are available for your viewing pleasure at securityweekly.com/on-demand. And now for the news. We've got some great stuff today. And first one here, Tyler, we're going to, Mr. Shields, we're going to kick off with Orca Security. Because this one was just, this was a huge funding round. So this was $550 million, but it was an add-on to the Series C, the previous Series C, which was 210. What's going on here, Tyler?
You know, I wish I had a good answer for this one. So it looks like $760 million in Series C since March, kind of a rolling close over, what is that, 7 months? Something like that?
7 months.
Yeah. Yep. I just can't, in my brain at all, figure out a revenue, and I was trying to do the math the other day, but to figure out a revenue plus growth percentage that takes us from 800% million. Yeah, that was the number we came up with on a very seriously large number, which I know, well, rumor mill has it that they don't have that seriously large number of revenue required to justify a $760 million C round. But hey, you know, sometimes those rumor mills aren't right. They're off track, and you know, maybe there's an extra 0 or 2 on their revenue that I'm unaware of. But to go from 1.2 billion to 1.8 billion evaluation from March to October, that's absolutely insane. Now, you know, I beat it up with you a little bit, Adrian, over Slack when we saw this thing come out. Like, how do we get there? If we can't get there from a growth and revenue perspective and doing it from the financial side, can we get there from a strategic perspective and do it from a, you know, public comps / comparing to others that exist in market? And the only thing I can think of, the only storyline that makes any sense on this one is that they're pitching the line of, hey, look, you know, Palo Alto Networks does 300, 400 million, whatever they're doing on cloud security today. So obviously the space is $1 trillion market, right? It's a monster. It's a, you know, many hundreds of billions, big TAM. And given that, and the way that we do things we being Orca, do things compared to how Palo Alto Network actually executes their protection and detection, kind of that agentless model, rapid onboarding, the storyline must be a comp against Palo Alto. That's the only way that I can see that you can get a strategic investment that large on the most likely revenue run rates and multiples that they have.
Yeah, and to give you the full runway here, they started out with a relatively, at least, you know, these days, humble 20 million Series A in May 2020.
Humble.
It is today.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot's happening under a decade. And I think it was 2015 when Tenable raised $250 million in what was a Series B, but you know, they'd already been around for a while. They weren't a startup at that point, but like that was unbelievably huge. 250 million. I remember back when I was at 451 Research, we went through our database, and that was the biggest raise ever, biggest VC raise ever in cybersecurity. And almost once a month, we see something that beats that these days.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and now sitting there. You're sitting there staring at an $800 million total fundraise over 16 months from May of 20 to now, on a $1.8 billion valuation. It's just absolutely insane.
Yeah, so
Johnny, if you're listening, our producer, we need to have a big like WTF icon that we can pop up on the screen right now. Just be like, bang, that's what's got to come out right here. Thank you, Johnny.
So we've also got Wiz in this category, Lacework. There are certainly some other folks in this category, and it's interesting because it's already, it seems to me a kind of a redo of a category that we already had here. So like we recently saw ThreatStack get acquired. Pretty lackluster acquisition there. Like paying back some investors. 68 million on over 70 raised. And, obviously, Orca and Wiz, these guys are doing a whole lot more, than ThreatStack and Cloud Passage and Dome 9 did back in the day. But still kind of the same space, kind of this workload, both workload security and the cloud management plane.
Yeah. It's a combo platter of CSPM, cloud security posture management, and runtime protection. Right. Well, maybe, right? That's a small piece of it, but the two big things are CSPM plus runtime protection of cloud assets. And that's the Wiz and Orca storyline, right? They protect and they provide visibility. The traditional older ones were CSPM. And I've said it before, and I when I did put it on LinkedIn, I got beat up pretty bad by some vendors that disagreed with me. But I've said it before, CSPM is a market that I don't see lasting long, because if CSPM, Cloud Security Posture Management, the ability to look at your cloud vendor and give you a structural analysis of just the cloud vendor in isolation, exists in every product, in every other market, right? In CWPP, in CNAP, in Next-Gen WAF, it's literally in every other market. Does that still need to be a market in isolation by itself? And the answer is no. So to me, the concept of CSPM is a fundamental component to supporting some other value proposition. In the case of Wiz, Orca, et cetera, they're saying it's that plus protection that they're going to find significant value from, right? In the case of Jupiter One, Axonius, and others, it's CSPM plus compliance plus visibility plus continuing analysis and alerting on change, more of a CMDB plus CSPM play. So, I think at the end of the day, like ThreatStack didn't have the greatest protection side of it. They were more of a pure play CSPM. They couldn't get the exit they wanted. And some of the other more traditional players that you mentioned are the traditional CSPM guys, right? And so that market's just rapidly shrinking and turning into these new, let's take multiple things and roll them together kind of plays. And that's where Wiz and Orca and Laceworks are trying to become different.
And, there's always the, kind of the boogeyman, are the public cloud platforms that these products are built upon, right? Like AWS, Azure, Microsoft, they can introduce stuff here that can kind of pull out the rug, no?
They could. I think that's always the hard part of anything right now is where that shared security model and where that demarcation point comes into play between, say, the CISO of the organization itself. What is the CISO in the organization responsible for, and where does that then demarcate to the CSP itself? And then with the CSP, there's a second demarcation point of, hey, we're not going to go above this. We're going to let vendors take these sections, right? And I think historically, they can and have pulled the rug out from under vendors in the past. But historically, they tend to let the more advanced technologies and techniques run their course and provide a lighter weight version that doesn't quite match in value prop over time, right? And so I don't think that's too much of a worry for the Wizzes and Orcas of the world, but there is a chance.
But then there's the argument is, what AWS has given me, is that good enough? sure, it's not as much as I could get with this other product, but I think also traditionally what we've seen is that, in certain categories, if it's there, and it's meeting the compliance requirement, a lot of people are just going to stop there. It's going to be good enough for them. They're not going to go for the extra features.
That's certainly true, and it's going to apply downward price pressure on folks that are CSPMs. And I think that's where Wiz and Orca have a good vision in the sense that they can look and see, protection being a second thing above and beyond CSPM, right? And that's harder. It's going to be more difficult for Amazon or the CSPs in general to roll out.
Yeah, one of the interesting things I saw here, like malware detection is a big thing in this space, which I thought was kind of odd to see here.
I'm not even sure why that's a big thing, to be honest with you. Maybe you read the articles closer than I did, but malware in what? Malware in running containers that are running in instances?
Yeah.
Is that the thing?
But how does that EC2 change? Instances and containers, yeah.
So this has always boggled my mind, and maybe this is my, as my son likes to call it, my old head, right? If a container is just a host, and we take that said host and put it in the cloud, and we don't leverage a ton of cloud native, and even if we do leverage a ton of cloud native calls, what's the difference between antivirus on that host and antivirus or any other technology on hardware, right? Very, very little fundamentally. Now, if we start to say we're going to take that host and we're going to break up and use cloud native services in a highly advanced way with advanced scaling, horizontal, vertical, then it is fundamentally different. And do we really need even AV at that point, right? But if you're just jamming containers into the cloud and going, hey, this is our cloud native strategy, then yeah, you still need AV. You still need all the same things you do on bare metal or wherever you're running that basic container, right? So, it's interesting. You've got all of these players. Like if you look at the CWPP market, the Cloud Workload Protection Platform market, that's kind of the reinvention of traditional AV on host, right? And what they're doing is being more intelligent about how they run in the cloud. But in essence, it's just
usually it's agentless
technologies in the cloud. Yeah. Could be. Many of them require agents as well to get the depth of analysis within the container itself.
Right.
It just, they can run as a sidecar alongside the container. They can be jammed in as a true agent within the container. Whatever gets them below the host and operating system and gives them the hooks they need at that fundamental layer.
Right.
Integrating with the other cloud places, those things like your data lake and what APIs you're able to push info to, and scalability. You have somewhat limited scalability on bare metal with inside a premise based on budget and pipe and such. Mm-hmm. But I think that's where they're trying to differentiate. But you're right. This is all the same thing with a different location, or even it's not even that. It's just a different model, and I think they're getting a ton of money out of it where it's not providing as much value as other things should be, such as credential monitoring, credential sprawl, credential access, and mitigations.
Yeah, so I think fundamentally there's a couple of interesting things here. I use this a lot. I hope I haven't actually said this analogy on this particular podcast, but I think enterprises today are going through a multi-stage thing. You've got the old school enterprises still got stuff in bare metal sitting in their data centers, multiple data centers around the world, et cetera. Step one after that is to take an app or a server or a service, chuck it into a container and shove it into a single cloud. And they say, hey, we're now cloud. Okay, great. You're not at all. You don't get any of the benefits and you get a lot of additional headache. But that's actually where most enterprises that I talk to today currently are. They're not leveraging cloud in any true cloud native way that gives them scalability, that gives them the ability to use the platform in the correct way. The next step is then saying, okay, we're going to take that service, app, whatever it is, the host, and break it up and make it into its smaller microservice model, multiple services, leveraging horizontal vertical scaling, cloud native approach, program the correct way. And that's true cloud native computing. Most enterprises aren't there yet, which is why, to take it back to the conversation about Orca, Wiz, and all of these cloud-centric markets, there's so much potential there, is because those markets are completely untapped. The enterprise just hasn't completed or hasn't even started many of the times that shift. And so, that progression as it gets faster will drive significant revenue to anybody that's in a truly cloud-centric version of what they do. Now, the problem is a lot of the vendors haven't figured out how to actually operate in that new world. And the ones that will operate in that new world well are the ones that are agentless, can look at things from an outside in, and can connect data not just from one CSP, but from 2 or 3 different cloud providers and an identity provider and on-premise products, and collect all of that data and make that actionable. That's where the future is going to be on true cloud security.
You mean a single pane of glass?
Don't use those words. Hate those words.
All right,
but
Johnny,
in essence, I don't actually mean single pane of glass. What I specifically mean is understanding how things connect and interoperate between those different components, not just surfacing the issues, but saying, hey, what happens if I give permission in my IDP for X? How does that cascade amongst all of my assets or all of my other components that I have in multiple cloud endpoints and apps, right? That's where true value will come from.
And the nature of cloud is we've got this rolling technology rollout that just is never going to end, where they're constantly introducing new products. And when they introduce those, these are now gaps in visibility and attack surface. And like often, for example, when AWS will roll stuff out, it doesn't work with CloudTrail right off the bat. Like you got to wait a while, and developers and folks are wanting to try it out and check it out and integrate it as quickly as they can. And again, security, I think, is going to be in this uncomfortable spot of being the folks saying, "Hey, could we hold off a bit? Could we pump the brakes a little bit here?" But that was something I constantly saw through years of going to AWS reInvent, was that these new, really cool, really interesting looking technologies would come out, and they'd be like, "Yeah, but they're only in these regions, and they don't connect with these other products that we have yet. You can't get logs from it yet."
Yeah. So actually, I want to use this opportunity to transition to the next article that I want to talk about, Adrian, if you're cool with that.
Sure. Yeah, go.
Because it's similar along the lines of this is our WTF icon again. SNCC, $8.5 billion valuation on a $530 million round. Now, the interesting thing here is I do think that they may have the appropriate revenue growth rate. They've been around long enough. They're seeing significant, multi-hundreds of % year-over-year growth for like 4 or 5 years now. So they might actually be more reasonable, certainly on an IPO track, but $8.5 billion, that's crazy. Amazing valuation.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's and we talked, that was one of the other ones we've seen this year, just a huge raise. And it's the reason it's here is Salesforce and Atlassian wanted a piece of it and threw in $75 million on top of all that other stuff that we've seen. And
how do you expect to get a return on putting $300 million on an $8.5 billion valuation? What type of return are you hoping for?
You never get a return on that. Maybe that's the goal. That's a lot of places' goal, is to dump that money, but
yeah, we're just in such a weird over cash-rich investment environment right now that it's just a seller's game.
And I don't have the numbers on it, but we are seeing quite a few security startups, going on the cheap, that are not getting good exits. And I just wonder how many of these are going to end up. I mean, FireEye is a great example. FireEye, went IPO. I think kind of the classic case of fake it till you make it, where what they had product wise when they went IPO that gave them the stock to be able to acquire Mandiant, like so thin what they had. They basically had that NX appliance, and that was it. And what the NX appliance could do and the value that it brought to customers and in the industry just did not justify the amount of financial value that was attached to that company. And they really struggled to kind of build that into a platform. And, to 2014 me, when I was writing up the deal analysis for Mandiant, and 2012 me when I was using the FireEye Annex product, those versions of me are not surprised to see this, to see them acquired by STG for something less than 2x, and then merged with McAfee Enterprise.
Yeah, what I will say is, when we were first seeing all these cyber unicorns popping up, let alone decacorns, but the original unicorn run like 10 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever it is now, I was telling all my friends, this has got to be nuts. Really, $1 billion? This is crazy talk. And here I am now, we're talking about bumping up against $10 billion numbers. And so future Tyler, when you come back and look at this, you were an idiot and you got it wrong, just as always.
And it cracks me up that the title in this article is McAfee Enterprise FireEye products to merge into $2 billion Titan. Like, there's nothing Titan about, but like you have to forget all the history to put something like that in the title there. Intel acquired McAfee for $7.68 billion back whenever that happened. 2010. Like, they have lost so much value.
Wow, who was left holding the bag? That's the question.
And I'm curious to see how this merger plays out, because like just thinking about those two products and how different those products are both deployed, managed, and the strategy that they use, like getting those to bolt on to each other and make something that's viable or usable to the consumer in order to hit those $2 billion marks. I don't envy.
There's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of overlap there. Like, I remember there was a rumor a while back that Cisco was going to acquire FireEye, and I just thought it was ridiculous because, there's such a huge amount of overlap between the companies. It just made absolutely no sense. And I think it's one of those rumors that somebody throws out to try and see if they can get, stock numbers to move or something like that. But yeah, I think it was Seeking Alpha is where I saw that announced, that rumor announced, and here we are. Huge amount of overlap here between these two companies. I was actually back when STG acquired FireEye, or the product side. Mandiant is now, I think the public FireEye was officially renamed Mandiant, but yeah, I was kind of thinking we'd see RSA thrown in here as well. That would be more of a threesome, but I don't know what they're going to do with RSA, because STG has RSA also sitting in the wings.
The cyber roll-ups continue. That's the thing. These PE firms are just buying, acquiring, and squeezing blood from the turnips.
Yeah. The other interesting acquisition was the Akamai Guardicore one. Like that one. Like the Zero Trust stuff and Guardicore in general, like it's a good product. It's super useful. They've had a lot of traction, and honestly, they provide quite a bit of value. They're very, very expensive, and they have a massive sales force that I'm not sure how Akamai is going to leverage this. That seems like a strange matchup for what Guardicore had already accomplished.
So if you take into account their acquisition of Soha, which was back then it was called SDP, Software Defined Perimeter. Today it's called ZTNA. That gives them a piece of connectivity into the enterprise. The idea with Soha is basically provide kind of reverse proxy tunneling into the enterprise for people externally to access internal applications without having to expose anything to the public internet. Including like fat clients and stuff like that, not just web-based stuff. So this, I guess I could see this being a kind of a natural extension of putting together a Zero Trust, story. And
that is true. The Guardicore product too was very, very good at the visibility side of this. So their ability to detect, isolate all the way down to the process and network layer with that reverse proxying. This actually could be an interesting product to see to fruition. Again, Akamai, they've got money, I guess. It's an interesting leader of the ship, we'll call for this product line. But I think it's the two together might be an interesting product at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I'm surprised someone else didn't pick up Guardicore, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question now. Like we were talking about earlier, there are all these companies who have raised a huge amount, and I mentioned it in the notes for this one. Like, what happens with Illumio? They've raised 5 times more than Guardicore here. Who's going to buy them? Because it's really looking like microsegmentation ended up kind of like NAC, kind of like a niche security control that's difficult to implement organization wide. So they just never hit the market penetration I think they initially planned on when they raised all that money.
It's a big investment. I mean, Zero Trust is a huge undertaking from a project standpoint anyway, and it's a big investment from a company. I mean, it does solve a ton of problems, but it is not as easy as any of the vendors make it seem.
Yeah, NAC solved a lot of problems. App whitelisting solved a lot of problems. But the problem was you couldn't implement it, the way that you would need to for it to solve all those problems.
Especially for year-over-year costs with the subscriptions that they were charging. I mean, you're in $1 million just to get the project going. It takes a year to deploy and get, your test bed done and functioning, and then you're up for renewal for another $1 million. So what's your total return on investment and cost of ownership over however long it takes to get fully deployed?
Yeah, I mean, there are all these breathless takes back in 2009, 2010 about how, app whitelisting, Bit9 was basically, going to make AV obsolete, because we're just going to lock everything down and, malware wouldn't be able to run because it wouldn't be in the, in the allow list. And
we saw how well that went.
Complete nightmare. Doesn't work. Like humans and businesses aren't compatible with that idea. And we still see a lot of startup segments and startups, pop up that don't take that into account. And, immediately when you see them, you're like, literally, that was my first question for Illumio when I briefed with them. I said, how is your product not going to be like going from managing 8 firewalls to 8,000? How are you going to handle that?
Same response. Crickets.
Yeah. No, that was they did not have an answer for that. And I really wanted them to be able to figure that out. I mean, it's something that you see in like the Firemon space, where they try and do the analysis for you on how to manage those rules. And it's just I think if they nailed that, Illumio would have had an IPO by now or would have been picked up by somebody. And I don't think it's going that route. All right. What else do we have here? So just a few funding items I'm going to just touch on. Privacy engineering is really hot now. Now we've got 2 tonic AI and duality technologies. And then there's a third that I can't mention yet because it's under embargo, but all Series B, all around the same amount. And, pretty humble, straightforward, but very necessary, I think. The whole idea here is we need data in dev testing environments, stuff like that, that's scrubbed, that's not sensitive data, so that we don't need the same security around those environments. What's your take on these, Tyler? I can't just say Tyler. You're both Tyler.
Yeah, no. Yeah, which Tyler? Tyler S.
Shields.
Tyler R. Shields.
Who's going to ask Shields?
Me. Yeah, so I honestly, my understanding of the space is limited. So, Adrian, if I read this right, it's taking real data, auto-scrubbing it, putting it into production systems that allow you to execute against similar yet secure data.
Yes, so some of them do that. Tonic, I think, does base it off your existing data. But my understanding there is they're actually generating fake data from scratch that's informed by the real data.
Got it. And how big are the rounds that we are seeing here? 20?
35, 30 Series Bs.
Series Bs. Well, they must be getting enough traction to make it somewhat worthwhile, right? But my first question is, is there enough there? Is there enough demand and need?
I don't know.
There? But I guess so. I mean, if they're getting a B.
So, I think again, this is going to be a niche. Like, you've got to be a company that's large enough, and has complex enough data models to need a product to do this. Otherwise, it's kind of like, well, there's this GitHub project and that works fine for me.
Yeah, that's my concern. That's my concern with these rounds is, are we going to see these companies find enough revenue to justify the round, or is it just, hey, let's put in 30, we'll get this thing flipped at 150, make 5x and run for the hills? I don't know. It's going to be an interesting market to follow, mostly because I'm not a pure engineer. Like, I'm a former recovering engineer. Yeah. I've moved away from it over the years. So, I don't know the actual need for this, but obviously there's something if there's money going into it.
It'd be a good question for the folks over at Application Security Weekly.
Yes, it would, and then I would also love to get Tonic or one of those guys on here to discuss exactly their market segment. I'd love to hear more about it. I think it's an interesting space.
Yeah. See what we can do about that. Let's see. What else did we have here? I think I need to refresh here. I added one at the last minute that was kind of like a data lake, data analytics play.
Yeah,
Gravwell. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's $3 million in seed funding. Kind of in that what I used to jokingly call SIM for your SIM. Where basically give me the data that you already have somewhere else that's not doing a good job of correlating it and finding insights, and we'll do that better.
Yeah, and I think Gravwell is a really underrated product, honestly. Like, they're kind of a homegrown bootstrap. Love the guys over there. They do a great job. Their product's fantastic. It is surprising what it takes to actually get that public visibility and that marketplace recognition kind of out of the gate. I think this will probably help them a little bit, but I also worry, like, small companies doing this bootstrap, as soon as they get money, like, it changes things, and it always does. So hopefully this changes things in a good way for them.
Yeah. I mean, so it's a space where, really, like the Sims never got there. Like, they ended up focusing all their time and effort, in my opinion, on just getting the data in there, building a whole bunch of parsers, and just didn't have the right product team to build the analytics side to be able to do all that correlation and pull out all those useful insights without tons of alert fatigue. So
yeah,
we desperately need somebody to solve this, and
especially with only really 2 or 3 big players in the market, right? That do this. I mean, you run into, you've got an overwhelming amount of data in Splunk, and then you end up with a huge subscription fee that no one can afford on data that you can't parse because it's just too big and there's too much delay.
Yeah.
Or you end up with Elk, where you got a partially free system that no one knows how to use because it's all open source and it takes a ton of training and the skill set to parse that data. Then you have 2 problems. And then you end up with something like Gravwell that can do a lot of this and limit some of that data, but they're just not being applied into those 2 spaces because, again, you're over-simmed already and not utilizing what you already have.
Yeah, and the problem with the Sims is that there's a lot of dev work there. I used to say you shouldn't call them products. You should think of them more as development platforms. Because I actually did know folks who were very happy with their Sim, but they had full-time Sim developers, that were actually building all the reporting and the data analytics on top of that. Same thing for Splunk. Most places that are happy with Splunk have all kinds of custom tooling and apps that they've created on top of it. So it's we definitely need something that doesn't have those huge development requirements. Otherwise, this security analytics is never going to reach a certain level of market penetration and be useful.
So you do end up with that gap, though. Now you just said it, right? Like, that limits all the way up to enterprise. So you end up with large business that doesn't have developers, that doesn't have security staff already, that's over fatigued. Small to medium business is left out. There's not a great market space for them to use most of those products. And then you start to think about small shops with large budgets, but again, you have no developers and no time. So there's a bunch of problems here, I think, in this space that have not been solved yet.
Yeah, opportunity to crack it. But all right, let's run through some of this stuff real quick. I feel like we're starting to run long here. NetApp acquired Cloud Checker. So Cloud Checker was kind of, they started out like focusing on cloud pricing, kind of pivoted into the same space as Evident.io, which became part of Palo Alto Prisma. So finally got kind of a late acquisition. Both names I hadn't heard in a while. I hadn't heard NetApp or Cloud Checker in a while. And One Identity, which is part of Quest, which got spun out of Dell, acquired OneLogin, which back in the day, Okta, Ping, and OneLogin were kind of the big three in the IAM space, big three platforms competing.
Didn't OneLogin acquire somebody last week too? Didn't they grab Tugboat? Maybe was that OneLogin who grabbed Tugboat? Quick, everybody to the Googles.
I'm actually testing a beta of a new search engine called u.com. So I'm not going to the Googles at the moment. OneTrust. That would be OneTrust.
OneTrust. There's too many ones out there. OneLogin, OneTrust, one this, one that.
One Identity acquired OneLogin. So they should also acquire OneTrust so we can, combine all the ones. We just get rid of all that confusing namespace collision. Oh, man. That's great. Dimitri posted a One Love GIF.
I love it. Also, I saw in the chat, NFT Ape has told us that I was saying ukulele wrong. It's an ukulele. So just for those who care, it's an ukulele. Thank you, NFT Ape, for giving me the correct pronunciation.
Nice. All right. Let's see. I'm going to skip a few things in here. If you haven't had a chance, I've got a link to the blog post on how Facebook managed to Thanos snap itself. And the short version is they have, and the reason I say Thanos snap is that they apparently have tooling that allows you to take entire data centers off the internet. Like just, they stop advertising BGP, which means DNS doesn't work anymore. To make it easy to run new fiber, stuff like that, take these big locations offline, and somehow manage to use that tool to take everything down all at once.
So they did that to themselves? Is that what I'm hearing?
They did.
Seems like a useful feature.
It sounded like a command fat finger, and they even had some tooling in place, some kind of throttling, some kind of alarm tooling that's supposed to prevent that kind of wide scale taking things offline, but it failed to prevent it. So, that's what they're doing right now, is trying to figure out, why the sanity checks failed and allowed it to happen. All happened very, very quickly, and took them a while to get back up and running because they needed physical access to things and had done a lot of security work to make it difficult to do anything malicious with physical access to things. So, and all their tooling for troubleshooting was down.
Yeah, but so it makes it difficult to do anything malicious, but it also makes it very difficult to do anything.
Yes.
So well done, guys.
Yeah.
Common security problem.
And finally, for our squirrel of the week here.
There they are. I love them.
Move on to that. While Facebook was down, Twitter had some fun, basically tweeted, hello, basically everyone. And it's funny because Twitter was actually kind of struggling a bit. LinkedIn was struggling a bit because all these people that were normally wasting their time on Facebook had to go find somewhere else to hang out with people, be social, and spend some time. And I think those other platforms got hit kind of hard. But Twitter jumped on it, and just fantastic stuff came out of that. Like, one of my favorites was Oscar Mayer replied to their hello, and they replied to Oscar Mayer and said, can we have the keys to the wiener truck? Some of the apps that were down, some of the brands that were actually down along with Facebook, like Instagram and WhatsApp, said hello. WhatsApp said hello, and Jack Dorsey replied to it and said, thought this was supposed to be encrypted.
Wow, that's
the favorite one I saw was it was something to the effect of, "Hello, we're the hackers that took down Facebook. If you don't pay us $700 million in cryptocurrency, we will turn it back on and unleash it on society again."
So I can do you one better than that. Did you see IDF's Twitter response?
I did not.
So they replied and said, if you need any help, IDF, which is Israel Defense Forces, if you don't know, IDF tech support is active and always ready to lend a hand. You can imagine the replies to that one.
Oh my gosh. Nothing like a government agency hopping on making fun of you. The trend was real. The meme was real.
Microsoft Teams got in there. They say unmutes Mike. Hey, everyone. So a lot of self-deprecating stuff in there. There was some what's that show called? Squid.
The Squid Game.
Yeah, Squid Game. There was a congratulations, you made it to the next round.
Yeah, I saw one. WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook eliminated. Only Twitter makes it to second game.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Some really good responses there. One of my favorite GIFs. Somebody had the Mr. Bean GIF where he's sitting next to somebody who's in a wheelchair with like a full body cast, basically, and he's looking at them. He's like, like crossing and uncrossing his legs because he has full mobility. So and they put the Twitter icon on Mr. Beam and. All of Facebook's brands on the person in a full body cast.
You gotta love it.
Good stuff. All right. So I think that's, you don't have any other favorites from that. I think we'll go ahead and close things out. Tyler, thank you for joining me today.
As always, brother.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it. And a big thanks to everyone for watching and listening to this week's episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.